Welcome to Creating Connections Podcast, episode 130. I'm Mitch.
And I'm Vicky.
And today on the podcast, we have someone that Vicky has brought to the table. Vicky, you talk about him?
I have a friend named Scott Corridan, who I've met through networking events in the Reno, Tahoe area. He started in Southern California and then relocated to Reno Tahoe area about 8 years ago or so. And we recently reconnected at an event, and he agreed to be our guest today. So I'm very excited to introduce him to all of you.
We'll hear from Scott right after the break.
That was nice and easy.
What are you talking about? This also speaks to a much bigger issue.
Providing personal solutions through understanding people. This is the Creating Connections podcast with Gitomer Certified Advisor Mitch Taylor and Certified Personality Trainer Vicky Musny.
Welcome back to Creating Connections Podcast, episode 130. I'm Mitch Taylor.
And I'm Vicky Musny.
And today we are with world-renowned event specialist, Scott Corridan. Scott says on his website, producing special events is most importantly about creating special moments. Oh my gosh.
That's why I knew he'd be a great guest.
More. Love it, love it, love it. For 27 years, Scott has crafted and mastered some of the most spectacular, but yet most intimate moments in his clients' lives. From all over Nevada and California, his work has been broadly shared through publications, television, and digital media. Scott, thank you so much for joining us in the podcast.
Thank you. It's a treat. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome.
Oh, we're excited that you could join us.
Thank you.
I got to say, Scott, your tagline, if you will, producing special events is most importantly about creating special moments. That's killer. I love it.
Well, good.
How did that come to be your mantra?
So a long time doing this. I think maybe in the
give us some backstory. Give us a little backstory.
Well, so 27 years of doing this. I got into it, I think, like any of us who find our calling by mistake. I was asked to help out with a fundraiser so many years ago. And got the bug. I loved the magic. I loved the fantasy. I loved what we created, and then watching people walk through that experience. And then I was quick to see the benefit. It was a fundraiser, the benefit of how an environment and a feeling could immediately impact what you could raise as a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting to me to see. And as a designer, that visual element really planted the seed that now has germinated for 27 years in all kinds of different directions. So that's where it started. And I was quick to then get into floral design. That's where it really all evolved back in the early days for me, was in floral. Floral then expanded to tablescaping and table design. A centerpiece just wasn't enough. What if we had candlesticks or specialty linens or chargers or whatever? And then I saw more and more opportunities. So tablescaping turned into room, or what I would characterize as environmental design. And then that ultimately led to having full control over producing an event as a quote unquote wedding planner or event producer, whatever title you want to assign to it. And here we are, so many years later, and a lot less hair on my head. So the stress.
It's a good look, though. I love that look.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, and then, going back to that time, and we all learn, nothing is ever perfect. We're still learning every day, I find. Mm-hmm. The idea that it's all about us, wrong. That was kind of kicked out of the water early on. The idea that it's about the flowers, wrong. That was kicked out, much to my ego chagrin, so many years later. It's not about the stuff. It's not about the things that we bring. That's what drives the business, and that's what makes our contracts happen, and of course what keeps us afloat as a business operating. But what it's about is how all those things come together and create feeling, create space, create sense. And those senses, and every client is different as to what their lead sense is. The visual, the hearing, the auditory part of it, the sensual, what things touch and how they feel. That's what they remember. They don't necessarily remember that they had white peonies or blush-colored roses. That kind of goes by the wayside. What they remember is how they felt when they first held their bouquet, or how they felt when they sat down at a candlelit table, or how they felt when they saw their father for the first time and then saw their groom for the first time. Those feelings is what they remember the day after, the week after, a year after, celebrating 25 years of marriage, 50 years of marriage. They won't remember the details. So that's really what I think that tagline, if you will, sort of suggests after all this time in my heart, what we do. I hope that makes sense.
It absolutely does.
It does. Mm-hmm.
It absolutely does. So, Vicki, go ahead. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think, and one of the reasons I wanted to have Scott on the show is because I knew that there would be a great connection. I knew that you guys had some common background. You know, Mitch is the son of a florist and got his start delivering flowers and has gone in lots of different directions.
You know the drill. Midnight on Friday night and having flower failure and trying to figure out the problem by 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. Yep, you know the drill.
Been there.
He's been there, and that particular niche is not part of my experience, but I've done a lot of other things in the event world over the last 2 decades. So
yeah. But
one of the other things that really made me go, oh yeah, we should have Scott on the show. The last time I saw you present, you said something and it just really resonated with me and our mantra of creating connections. And I think sometimes, as you both know, there can be this little bit of animosity between the entertainers and the MCs that want to work out the timeline for the reception, and the planners that, there's this little power struggle at times. And I think we're silly to deny that that's not there, even though, yes, there are certainly exceptions. A lot of times there is a power struggle for that piece of things. But you said something to the effect of, and I tried to write it down from memory, but you basically said if every event pro that's involved in an event has an ulterior motive, and I'm pausing, and then you said the ulterior motive to give the client the best possible, best imaginable experience. And that's when I went, yes, that is such a refreshing perspective. Can you just expound a little bit on that from your experience?
Sure. I'll take it from the trenches where my career started as a floral designer, as I shared, and then evolving from there, and then into the filter of being a wedding planner. The thing that I didn't know at the time was the frustration that I had with event planners in hindsight now for their lack of understanding. And that lack of understanding can often translate to a lack of empathy, which relates to a lack of support. And then the follow through, not just for you as an individual vendor, but for a lot of other people who are on a job, is sacrificed. People are performing at their best. And so going back to the flower delivery scenario, there aren't a lot of people who know what it's like to have $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 in wholesale cost on flowers, do your very best to prep and preserve and arrange, and find out your flowers are failing the midnight before you're supposed to deliver. And then how do you make that right? How do you write that course and make the day or the delivery, whatever it is, as perfect as it was supposed to be? And a lot of planners, I find, don't have that empathy. They're literally not in the trenches. And I won't characterize planners as people who walk around in nice shoes and nice suits and nice dresses. That's what you see on the show floor in the front of the room. But the best planners understand what happens in the back of the room. And it's not our position necessarily to judge or to not understand. It's always our position to problem solve and figure out how that vendor can be supported to get to the finish line, and what can we do together as a team. So to me, I think, Vicki, the bigger point there for me as a baseline is in the planning position, we know everybody's business. We know our client's business. We know every vendor's business. We're watching the overall bottom line budget and contracts for the client. Are they spending, I'll throw out numbers that are normal for us. I don't know if they're normal for everybody else, but our norm is about $1,000 per guest, which let's say it's 150 guests. Are they spending $150,000? We can tell you in great detail exactly how that full $150,000 is being spent. So on the client side and being their advocate, we know all the details and all the concerns that they've got. Transferring that over now to where the rubber meets the mat, so to speak, on the vendor side, we know what all the vendors are going through. And there is natural overlap with certain key vendors. Catering, food, and beverage with design decor, that's a natural symbiosis. The two can't work without the other. And then there are other vendors that really don't interact with any of the other vendors on a job. The valet driver or the shuttle bus driver may never see the lead singer or the guitarist or the DJ.
Right.
The last minute alterer coming in to take care of the bride's dress is highly likely never going to cross paths with the baker delivering the cake. But we know what everybody is doing, where they're supposed to be, what's supposed to be fulfilled. And most importantly, because this is where the problems come in, if there's going to be problems, where are we having issues? Who's delayed? Who's stuck in traffic? What car broke down? What equipment failed? What flowers wilted? And how can we come together as a team to make that now okay and hide it behind the scenes? The client isn't affected, and then deliver a product that maybe not exactly 100% what we planned, but it still delivered 110% of what they expected. That's how I see it. And so for me, and the thing too, and it's something I say often, I came through the trenches in flowers and design decor. I don't know how to cook. I would never claim that I could put together an entree. I'd be an idiot if I tried. I can snap a really lousy, I could snap a really lousy photo on my iPhone, but I would never claim to be a photographer. I am tone deaf, so not only am I not going to sing, I am not going to do a mix of music on an iPod or a board. So to me, I can't survive, my team can't survive without all the other critical components that are in the room. In a rush or an emergency, I can park a car. I'm a pretty decent valet. I'm a great maitre d', and I can smoke and mirror you past a disaster that might be happening that I don't want you to see. I can stitch a dress. I'm okay with thread and needle. But the point being, none of us exists on our own in a vacuum with our service. All of us are a sum of what becomes that total piece. And if we're not in sync with one another and haven't taken the time to hear one another and what we all individually need to do our job, built that into a timeline and an event platform, then none of us are going to be successful and the event isn't what it should be. So there you go.
That's just such a healthy and refreshing perspective, to be reminded of the importance of team. None of us puts on a wedding by ourselves.
Yeah. So
there's been a couple where I've had to do that, and it's been an absolute disaster that almost killed me. So yeah, not looking to repeat that.
No, you're like taking the photos and hitting play on the iPod while you're officiating, or like what?
It's the stuff you try to explain to a client when you're on the front side and you're contracting about what is the worst case scenario. This always gets to a conversation why insurance is so important and why contracts are so important. I've been through massive wildfires that have shut down freeways. I've been through in my career 9/11. We had five weddings during the course of 9/11 that were affected, everywhere from guest counts being reduced from 250 down to 20, to weddings that had to be postponed or delayed at great financial loss because everything was non-refundable at that point. So we've been through that. I've been through, in our Tahoe office, I've been through snow closures, avalanche closures, safety issues. So, you know, when somebody is coming in from a different area, oftentimes our entertainers are coming from afar. Oftentimes our caterers are coming from afar. For Tahoe, we'll have caterers coming up from Reno or Sacramento. If the 80 is shut down, the 80 is shut down. There's nothing you can do about that, and none planned for that. There's nothing you can plan for. So in that case, all of us, whoever's on deck, you start rallying around to make it happen, whatever that new thing is that's going to happen. And you pray to God that you've infused enough humor into your client where they've got the ability to rise above themselves and understand the circumstances. So anyway, not preferred or ideal, but you know, you deal with it.
I have several tangents to take here.
Yeah, there's a lot we can do. Go for it.
The first one, to piggyback off of that, what you just said, Scott, is in those times of trial, if you will, and those times of challenges, how important is it to you, and how do you foster that client relationship? Because I find in any situation we have issues, if you have a strong client relationship, you can overcome the issue very easily. Not very easily, but more easily than if it was just no relationship with the client whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How does that tie into play for you?
You tell the truth and you tell it with sensitivity. So I would say by and large, in wedding world, at risk of sounding sexist, I'm not sounding sexist, our primary concern is the bride, and then it seems secondarily are moms. Sometimes moms both are involved, or multiple if there's split families and you've got stepmoms or whatever. Almost always the mother of the bride is involved, and a lot of times the mother of the groom is involved. And so those key women, and their emotions are on the line.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who paid for what or where those funding streams came from.
Yeah.
They're the three individuals who've got most in play emotionally. And so, not to be dismissive or to kind of reduce it down and make it too simple, the bottom line, no matter what, you're going to get married. There will be a ceremony. So that is going to happen. That's not going to happen. It may not happen exactly as we thought, but you will get married. And then the next thing, barring some insane scenario, 9/11 being a good example, and God willing that never happens again, by and large, all of your guests are here unless someone's stuck on the freeway, and they'll get here, and you will have a celebration that follows your ceremony. So those things are in check. Those things are going to happen no matter what. Now, whatever the issue is that we're facing, and whatever the worst case or the best case is of that kind of an issue, we don't have control over it. And everybody out on the floor is doing their very best to make sure that we're remedying the problem. And here's how they're remedying it. And that's when I typically will go back into contract fulfillment and the black and white around dollars and cents and legality. The florist is here, they're performing. The linens are here, they're being dropped. The kitchen is here and they're delaying, so everything that's in the kitchen is going to be put off by 2 or 3 hours, whatever it is, to solve the food and beverage issue. In the meantime, people have got water and lemonade and cucumber water, and everyone's hydrated. We're passing out appetizers. We're dealing with it, and everyone's performing to the best of their abilities in that circumstance. So to me, that's the truth, and then the emotional management. And if you can get through 2 of those things, everything else kind of falls in place, I find. It's not great. You don't deal with smiles, but maybe somebody's laughing and maybe they're trying to laugh through the tears. But if you tell the truth and you're sensitive to the emotional part of why this is difficult for the people it's difficult for, that's your best worst case. And it generally works. So that's how I do it.
Cool. So that's more the front of house and some back of house side too.
Yeah.
But if we look at the other question I had to piggyback off that was managing, as you talked about earlier, in transitioning from, where that you're always putting that client need first versus, managing your own ego, if you will, of I need this and yada, yada, yada. How did you make that switch, and how would you recommend other people make that switch where it's not about us? It truly is about delivering the best and greatest experience you can for your client. How do you encourage wedding pros, event pros to make that switch and that change, if you will, and to realize what you didn't know you didn't know?
That's a big question.
Great question. What comes to mind, I don't know that this follows naturally to answering the question, but what comes to mind is, I'm seeing this more through the back of house filter with the vendor team.
Sure.
Awareness and empathy. When we're signing contracts with clients as planners on the front side, and we call it a budget profile. When we're building the full budget profile for an event that includes every single line item for all the vendors who will be in play for a wedding day, I always say it with every single client. No, and this has to do with how we manage our events post-wedding. We're with most of our clients 2 to 4 weeks after the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost always about accounting, cleaning up the final bills and making sure all the accounting was done properly. What I say on that front side, when I'm speaking to that back side, is the truth. There's not a single vendor who plans to fail. Nobody plans to fail. And further than that, there's not a single vendor who plans to underperform. I think as a rule of thumb, and I'm the first one in line, we are people pleasers. We take everything that we do very personally. We hate failure. It makes us feel horrible. And we emotionally wear our hearts on our sleeves no matter how good we are at being professional. So none of us intends to fail and none of us intends to underperform. All of us hopes to overperform and get all the wonderful strokes and applause that we crave personally in the context of making a great event for a wet bride and groom. Taking it out of the back of house and that sort of failure or underperformance and the awareness that's required as a planner or any team member in fulfilling an event. This is 27 years speaking. I didn't have this 27 years ago. I don't know if I had it 17 years ago or 7 years ago. But I can walk on a job site with full awareness of my timeline and knowing what everyone is supposed to be doing, quote unquote, supposed to be doing. And if there's something not going right, I'll pick up on it pretty quickly. Whatever that is. Someone's frustrated and I see a frustrated face. Someone's smoking a cigarette and it doesn't matter whether they're smoking a cigarette or not. That means that they're frustrated, and why are they frustrated? And let's get them to the right place to smoke the cigarette. There's a car that's in the wrong place. There's something going on with that car that shouldn't be going on. What's going on there? Walls aren't generally soundproof the way you want them to be soundproof. I walk past a room and I can hear something happening on the other side of the wall, and whether I should or shouldn't have heard it, I heard it. And so how do I address what I'm hearing, and how do I help make that be better? And so that level of awareness is something that comes with time. It comes with, in the planner's role, we know every single detail that's going on, and if something's going wrong, we're the first to know it. Now that I know about it, how do I help get the person or the situation through it? There's not enough power on this property. Okay, how do we look at spider boxes, generators, or running extension cords a football field away to draw power for something else? I don't know. There are vans stuck on the freeway that can't get here in time. Okay, well, what's their arrival time and what can they do the minute they get here? What can we be doing in the interim to get done and problem solve other things that we do have time to do?
Yep.
The chicken
and
has...
imagine though, Scott, if every event pro had that perspective, even if your official role is not planner, if you had the perspective of, this is not about me, and I need to be aware of what every other event pro that's coming to this event and making this day happen is trying to accomplish, how much that could be. Because I think that's something that we struggle with sometimes, as we will work with a particular photographer whose view is, this is a photo shoot, or the caterer who, this is a fine dining experience. You know, this is a dance party. And no, it's a wedding, and there's lots of different elements in the celebration. And even though we have our area of specialty, we have to somehow train ourselves to consciously look beyond what we think we're in charge of and what we are trying to create, and see that bigger picture.
All those services need to combine together to ultimately have the goal of serving the couple in their own capacity. In my opinion. And I love the thing you touched on there, Scott, about risk. I don't know if you really assessed it as, put it as risk, but I've taken...
That's how you think.
That's how I think, is risk. Yes. And so how do you assess the risk of, okay, these people aren't going to be here on time, right? The vans on the freeway, right? So what can you do in the interim to make sure that you're helping them once they get there, so the uptime can be as quick as possible and negated from what it should have been, right? Assessing risk is something I don't think enough event pros do. Would you tend to agree, or what's your thoughts on that?
I would tend to agree. And it makes me sad saying that out loud. So I can't address that without giving a frank response of why we work with the people we work with. You learn that over time, and we all started somewhere. We all had to start someplace. And I started somewhere, and God knows I made some glorious mistakes over the first number of years. And it seems like almost every mistake is a costly one. It always seems like it has a cost associated with it, just as a drag to bear. That being what it is these days, if I'm not able to properly vet or confirm a vendor, insurance is in place, a track record is there, referrals are strong, that I haven't worked with before, then it's highly unlikely that I'll be working with them right now. I'm not willing to take that risk. So that's kind of a bold, blunt thing to say in an interview like this, but that's a truth for us and how we run our business. The next thing, kind of taking that to the next level, maybe out of order here, because you hit on this, there are certain vendors that you simply know are time crunched and time sensitive. I would say most of our DJs and most of our entertainers don't have a lot of wiggle room or time in their schedule to sit down and eat, let alone hang out and be available to help if something goes wrong. Other vendors that are on deck that typically are around for a longer time, the rental folks are on deck for a long time, the food and beverage folks are, design decor is, hair and makeup often is, though they're busy in crunch times and the kind of quiet times. When something goes wrong and you've built your team and you have relationships that go beyond the black and white in a contract or the green in a bank account, then those people will step in. And I've had that happen often enough. It doesn't have to happen often, but I've had it happen often enough where, hey, Scott, what's going on? I see that you need an extra hand. I've got 20 minutes of downtime. What can I do to help? Well, the van is stuck in a 5-foot snowbank and they can't get out and we need to get all the equipment out of there. Oh, for sure. Let me go down and help. So it's that kind of thing that in the building of the relationships amongst vendors and being very clear that we're all part of a larger group, I guess then I'll get into this. You can't do this by yourself. I can't have a wedding. You can't have a wedding that is just a meal with nothing on the table and no sound. I can't have a wedding that's just a DJ and no food or wine. I can't have a wedding that's a beautiful girl in a dress and no aisle to walk down. So when you start thinking about, and I guess I'm saying this to the vendors who are watching this, and it's something that I really wouldn't say necessarily to somebody who's reaching out to me. Good. When you start thinking in your very limited, boxed, egocentric, business-centric way about why you're so important, think about the context of you doing a wedding with only you doing a wedding. Like literally take 10 seconds and imagine what that looks like. It's a disaster.
It's not a pretty sight, let me tell you.
You're a caterer who's cooking in your own kitchen. Okay, well, good for you. I'm sure it's going to be a lovely meal. You're a DJ playing in your own garage. Okay, great for you and your neighbors who can hear what you're doing. You're a valet driving no one around to no place. Okay, great. You've got a great car. Like literally think about who you are and what service you provide.
Yes.
Without everybody else involved, you're nothing. So what's the point in thinking that way? That's a bit harsh, but I guess that's the truth. I've never had to answer that.
No, that's right on. It really is.
So besides amazing reviews and insurance and I's dotted, T's crossed contracts, what else would you look for in an event pro that would like to be a part of one of your events?
Collaboration. And I think a perfect example comes to mind right away. All the photographers, not all the photographers, half the photographers are going to boo me right now and half of them are going to understand. So photography is a really great example. I think in the actual wedding timeline, from the moment that the bride and the groom are on deck till the time that they are off deck, that reality for them, there is really only one other vendor above all others that controls timing as much as we do on behalf of everybody who's involved in something, and that's the photographer. So with great empathy, and again, I can't photograph anything very well, so I cannot do their job. So with empathy to their contract and their contract fulfillment and their compensation as the baseline for how I understand their role, there's a live event that's happening. And the client may well have told you that they want 20 post photographs to take course over an hour under these certain circumstances and through this kind of a filter. That client also has probably 10 to 20 family members and probably 100 plus, God knows how many, guests who have come together to celebrate this moment in time. So there's a live event that's happening before, and more important, than your static photo shoot. And so in that live event, there's a very profound legal, emotional, spiritual, faith-based ceremony that's going to take place that trumps all of us. That's more important than anything of us are doing. And then beyond, before, after all of that, there is also a lot more money going down. If I know the general cost of a good photographer's contract, there's an event that's probably 10 to 15 times that value that's happening, representing a lot of other people who have services to provide that need to happen timely. The chef needs to send the entree out once it's been fired within 10 minutes. That can't be delayed. And if there's a toast that needs to happen at sunset, today the sunset is happening at a specific time. I can't push the sun back, and I can't have everyone come back tomorrow.
You can't, but Scott, that's why we hired you. We expected you to take care of that.
Those were really expensive contracts. In a soundstage with a green wall.
Exactly.
So that all said, and we work with phenomenal photographers, and there are photographers who I won't work with for these reasons. That all said, your professional job is to be the fly on the wall, catch the moments none of us could have ever scripted and none of us could have ever magically known were going to happen, and follow your contract, because it is critical that that one photo with that one lake backdrop in that one posture position is critical to the client. I get it. So capture that photograph and then fit in, if the timeline's falling apart, all those other key photographs. But remember, standing shoulder to shoulder with you is an event planner, is a caterer, a banquet manager, a floor manager, bussers, servers, people in scullery, people in rentals waiting to strike the ceremony site, people on music and entertainment waiting to strike their first set. There's a whole lot more going on than your camera. And you've got to understand that. So now take that away from the photographers and all the ones that are hating me right now and build that to the larger entire pool.
Yes.
If you don't understand collaboration as a vendor, if you don't understand how important you are and how important your role is, and reciprocally how important all the other roles are that are involved in making this happen, I don't want to work with you. I can't. You can't be worked with. You can't work together.
Amen.
Go do your photo shoot of a flower by yourself, and go make your board mixes on your iPad by yourself, and go cook a dinner for yourself. And we'll let you know how the wedding turned out. Yep. And I don't want to be so crass, but that's the truth.
Absolutely. What final thoughts, Vicki? Any final questions?
I just appreciate the refreshing honesty and a good perspective of someone that, you know, that gets it. And you're putting on incredible, you know, high-end events in some of the nicest venues. I know some of the ones in our region, you know, the Tahoe and beyond area. You're working with great people. And I think it's also maybe people that are newer that can't relate to some of those things. Like, I don't get to pick what vendors, you know, I work with. That's something to grow to and aspire to. And if you are serving your clients at, you know, a certain level, and you're not settling and you're continuing to work towards your 27-year goal of being, you know, where Scott is now, that's something to look forward to. That as you get more confident in yourself and the level of service that you provide, you will attract those other service providers that have that same mindset, and you'll find those team players. So.
But it's something I'll offer for everybody as a reminder, and it's something I'm conscious of on a daily basis. my brother and sister-in-law were up visiting this past weekend, and we were reminiscing about a bunch of stuff, and they've both have had very successful careers, and where they're at now in their mid-40s is very different than where they were at when they were 20. That said, context, the outrageous to the real. A year ago this time, I don't want to time date or timestamp this interview, but a year ago, August 4th, 2016, yes, we produced a 4-day event for 365 guests for a bride and groom, and the total payout bill on that was $1.3 million. So ooh and ah and oh my God and blah, blah, blah. 27 years ago, the first boutonniere I ever made took me 8 hours to make. I didn't understand floral tape. I didn't understand what floral wire was. I couldn't figure out how to pierce a stem in a rose. Once it was pierced with the wire, I didn't understand how to bend it and how to tape it and how to make it look pretty, as all that stuff that shows up in Martha Stewart wedding magazines. And it was the most frustrating experience of my then very young life. My ego, and I had hair and it was dyed white and I wore it spiky and I couldn't figure out how to make this damn thing work. So 27 years later, that's 27 years worth of experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure something's happening for somebody out there that I'd have never experienced or gone through, but that's where you get yourself. That's how it happens. My reality today didn't happen overnight. It took 27 years to happen. And someday when I don't need to make any money and I'm whatever it is, retired and got the money,
independently wealthy,
I'll write the tell-all book of all the mistakes I've made and all the names attached to them. And it should be for a really great laugh and a good coffee table experience, but we've all been there. And you have to hold true. I think the thing in hindsight I wish I would have done is held more true to myself, than I allowed myself to be bended into doing things that I weren't accurate or true to myself in order to make a buck or be successful or to get forward. In hindsight, that would be the one thing I'd do differently. 27 years may have been reduced to maybe 15 or 16, but that was
being true to yourself sooner and being able to stand up for yourself and what you know you want to do and how you want to serve. Yeah.
Yep. Because define right however you want to define right. Right is always what's right for you, and you've got to do what's right for you. Yes.
Scott, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
Our website is the best way for sure. It's www.scottcorridan.net, and it's Corridan. You can see our team there. You can reach out to any one of them individually through email or by phone, and of course my email and phone number is on there. And then I think I'm so bad at this part, it has to do with my age. I think that we are exposed in all social media. So Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
I've got the links. I'll post them in the show notes.
It's all listed on the website. Yeah. Not my forte. I leave that to others.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, so much for being a part of the program today.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
No, it's been great to have you here. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, you guys.
Man, what a great interview with Scott. Oh my gosh.
He's wonderful. I have been so looking forward to having him on our show. It took us a little while to connect schedule-wise. He's obviously, you can guess, a very, very busy man, especially this time of year. We are in high wedding season in the Tahoe area. So grateful that he was able to join us. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too.
And I loved his insights. I mean, someone that does that high level of events, you wouldn't think would be that well grounded. Yeah.
He's very real about, I think he remembers where he started, you know?
Yes.
He had very humble beginnings and he worked his way up through, and he did get a bit of a break with a reality TV show. And that, you know, helped push him a little bit into the limelight sooner. But yeah, it's just super, super real and true in his heart, all about creating connections. And when I told him that was the name of our show, he was like, absolutely, count me in. Just let me know. We'll figure it out. And it was great to have him.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Listen up next week for more great content about how you can provide personal solutions through understanding people better. See you next time.
Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Creating Connections podcast with Gitomer Certified Advisor Mitch Taylor and Certified Personality Trainer Vicky Musni. For more information on providing personal solutions through understanding people better, visit creatingconnections.biz.